We're all striving for one thing. It's
Yeah,
happiness.
absolutely. And it's one thing that we, again, like I hate like using cliches, but it's real. It's true. Like it's not necessarily a cliche. Like we all want to be happy. I've never come across somebody, in the 12 years of clinical practice and research practice that I've engaged now as a clinical psychologist, I've never come across somebody who said like, my goal in life is to be miserable, is to be unfulfilled, it's to be disengaged and socially isolated. Never met one. Now there's probably going to be some like, person that like emails me after this or like gets on Instagram like, I'm that person. Like, I don't want to feel fulfilled. Like, I mean, and then I'm just going to say, you're a liar or you're, I don't know, you're a sociopath. No, I'm
Or
kidding.
delusioned.
But no, it's true. We all really are striving to be happy. And you can see that in like the way we live life and engage in behavior. Like sometimes we just don't really have the education or the knowledge of like how what we're engaging in could add to fulfillment and happiness in our life, and how maybe we think it will, but it won't. And that's where people get caught up in things like addiction. When people get caught up in things, like overindulgent, indulging in social media. I keep making fun of all the social media like people right now. It's because for me, I also see like it's a great way to connect, but it's also a really great way to pull away from people. But that's what happens, and our behavior, what we engage in, it's one thing that we can control. I mean, we can always engage in something different, but sometimes we just don't have the great education to kind of understand like whether or not like what we are doing or the behavior you're engaging in, like how it directly like influences true happiness or gives us that kind of false sense of gratification and happiness that really is only temporary, gives a great dopamine pleasure reward center spike, and the next thing we know, we're back at it for more. But on the other side, on the back end of things, it's just causing a just path of damage, miles and miles of damage. So strive for happiness. We just have to do it in a way that is truly fulfilling to us, so that when, it sounds morbid, when we're on our deathbed, like we will look back and we say, I don't have a regret in that. I'm so glad I did that. Because for me, I don't know about you, Patrick, when I look back on my deathbed, and we're taking this a little bit deep and slightly morbid, but I'm okay with that. When I look back and I'm on my deathbed, whenever that is, when I'm 140, I'm going to look back and say, man, I am so glad that I engaged like with my family instead of like doing, 80-hour work weeks every single week or 100-hour work weeks. I truly hope that.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Totally. And I think similar, not studies, but observations have been made with people close to death, and they have been asked those questions. And what were the priorities in life? And the priority was not work. The priority was relationships, maintaining relationships, and getting the fundamentals right. And I think we get it because when you do spend time with family, there's a sense of comfort in that, and there's a sense of belonging in it. Whereas when it's go, 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 it's almost that your attention is consumed by work. And there's something amiss there. It would be very interesting in terms of like all of the science that's abounding now with heart rate variability and gadgets, is to go into the Amazon and to find a tribal group which has been untouched, if such a group exists, untouched by modernization, and measure their data.
Here we go. Next Hanu health research
And
study. Here we go.
so, yeah, that's the
Yeah,
next quest.
indeed. Because you predict that because of maybe, I won't say the lack of evolution, but I would say maybe the lack of distraction. Would you predict that these individuals would have more resilient nervous systems, or would you predict something different?
Oh, I would without a doubt say that they are more
Yeah, I would
resilient.
say so too.
They're close to nature. They're naturally earthing. They're eating natural foods. They're breathing unpolluted air. They're in an environment whereby you can guarantee that they are not working 8 hours a day. They are working whatever they need to survive, to get food, etc. And there's a sense of belonging. And, really, that's what any person is looking
Yeah.
for.
I totally agree. And, it's one of those things that, like, I mean, these are people who are living truly like our ancestors, where it's like, are they experiencing, the stressor of potentially like having to, let's say look for food and maybe not find it. And so they're going some time without food. Absolutely. Is that a stressor? Yes, but it's an acute transient stressor. Is there the potential of, so we talked about famine. Is there a potential of, like getting bit by a snake in the Amazon and dying, or like being attacked by a mountain lion, or whatever, wherever the person's at, whatever the threat they have? There is. But again, that's what our ancestors lived with. There are these transient acute stressors. They're not these long-term chronic stressors that really, like, over time have such a detrimental
Yeah.
compounding effect. And I think it's a huge distinction for us to make. So I would absolutely agree with you. Like, these individuals
Mm.
feeling a sense of belonging, being a part of their tribe, is something that I actually try to take the mentality of my own family and then with kind of my social group as well. And Ben Greenfield talks about this a lot. And we talk about this a lot on his podcast, of like, there is probably no greater feeling than when you truly feel like a part of a tribe. Like when you truly feel like a sense of belonging, like these are my people, not to the exclusion or inclusion of who's in it or who's not in it, but just feeling that sense of like, I am actually like a part of something. That brings such fulfillment. And so if people can get
Mm.
back to that, because I feel like we have lost some connection, but we're learning about how great that is for our overall sense of mental health and physical health, like that will help to solve so many health problems in today's day and age. It's just
Mm.
like, even if we
Mm.
threw
Mm.
away, I mean, and again, like I'm not telling people to do this, but if we threw away like, all the sense of like heart rate variability training, even breath work, even like anything, and we just said, I want to get back just to kind of one core value, which is being a part of a social tribe, I think that's like the best place to start.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you disagree with that.
Yeah. No, no, I totally agree with it. And just as you were talking there, I was only thinking, like, I have an 11-year-old kid, and we play an Irish game. It's called hurling,
Not curling like the
Hurling.
Canadians do.
And no, it's a game that's played by sticks. It's an ancient game. It was played over about 2,000 years ago, and she's on a pitch, and it's a grass. It's the fastest field sport, I think, on earth. But she's got a sense of community. She's a young kid with 14 other kids, and there's that teamwork. They'll get hit by the ball, so they'll get, unfortunately or fortunately not too injured. But there's disappointments, there's triumphs, there's good days, there's bad days, there's teamwork, there's that solidarity, there's support there. And it's almost as if the sports and religion and organizations and different things of today is replicating the social grouping and gatherings of the past. And as I said earlier on, maybe sports is one of the key features for growing kids and also for the parents, because I feel there's a sense of solidarity then when you're bringing your kid to the sport and you're watching them evolve. And, the other thing about this is that children will get bullied in school generally and very often. But if a young kid is able to excel in a particular field, they always will have that inner strength, that they have this inner strength that regardless of what's happening on the outside, they know themselves, that they know that they have been capable, that they have been able to achieve, that they have done well in a certain area. And that inner strength can provide a resolve regardless of what's happening on the outside. But if there's a kid who's solely entrapped with information technology and that's their world, do they have the inner strength to be able to cope with the trials and tribulations of everyday life? And it's all part of growing up. We all got bullied growing up. That's inevitable, and there's always these tough nuts of kids. And I always, like, when I think back of my own life, and anybody, I'm sure, look at the people who did the bullying to you, and 30 years and 40 years on, look at them and watch that space. And this is a marathon. So if you're a young kid or a teenager that feels you're at the wrong end, in terms of getting bullied, don't worry about it. This too will
Yeah, no,
pass.
indeed. Great words of wisdom. One of the most, famous psychologists in the world, his name's Alfred Adler. He came up with this idea that, especially as kids, and even as adults, we're all striving to avoid a sense of inferiority, because nobody wants to feel inferior. And so when we're bullied, especially as kids, like we feel inferior. We feel like we can't protect ourselves. And a lot of times then we go and engage in things that are almost like outlets. They're escapes. And one of the big ways that people are doing this right now, we've mentioned it a couple of times, is engaged in like information technology and technology in regards to social media. And we lose our sense of independent thinking. We lose our sense of autonomy. And that's a really dangerous place to be. So the challenge right now is how can we help individuals, especially young kids, to develop that sense of inner strength, that sense of autonomy and independence, and not just us, especially me, I'm thinking as a parent, like kind of almost like bullying them around, telling them what to do and what not to do, where they don't have kind of their ability to like think for themselves and think like, is this something that is, is this decision something that actually makes sense? Does it benefit me and benefit somebody else and not hurt somebody else? And so, again, I think it's just kind of worth us as adults kind of looking into that too. Like where are our escapes that we're, kind of engaging in? Where are we kind of like leaving other areas of life and we're kind of like relinquishing our sense of self-thinking and autonomy and independence because we're trying to fill a void because we feel, inferior. So yeah, again, I could derail us on this for an hour. People came to this and like, I thought you guys were like the HRV breathing, like Q&A podcasts, like people, you guys are over here talking about meaning and purpose and life. And I'm like, this is the stuff that matters. That true. Everything matters. I'm not saying that what we don't talk, the other things that we talk about, that they don't matter, but this stuff really matters. So yeah, Patrick, great thoughts of words, the great words of wisdom and thoughts here. Thanks for listening to the Hanu Health Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. This podcast would not happen without listeners and supporters like you. And the best way to support us and the show is to head on over to iTunes and provide us with a 5-star review. This helps us reach others and spread the good word of breathing and stress resiliency. If we read your 5-star review on air, please reach out to podcast@hanuhealth.com with your name and mailing address, and we will send you some sweet Hanu gear. Until next time, breathe better and stress less.